welcome back in. This is a very different interview as I'm actually doing it in person. I haven't had a in-person interview in a long time. I think one of the first ones we're doing were actually with composers 3 or 4 years ago. No, more than that, five or 6 years ago. So it's really nice to have another in-person interview again. At home, we're joined by Jonen.
Hello.
Yeah. And so he has been living in Japan for 23 years and has been living as a Komuso, as a monk, Shakuhachi practitioner, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
English teacher too.
Yeah, that's done. That's definitely done.
That's always good. So we're going to find out how long I can sit in Seiza before I give up and go into regular sitting, because it's probably not going to be long. I had a long day of sitting Seiza yesterday too. So anyways, who are you?
I think anyone that's done Buddhist practice knows that that's one of the worst questions you can ask.
So hard.
It's the hardest. I'm basically from Western Nebraska, and I've just always considered myself like a pachinko ball.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of bouncing around, not really fitting in anywhere until I got to Japan and suddenly, found that little slot where being an outsider is actually a place. I've always kind of felt like an outsider, and then here in Japan, being a gaijin was actually something suitable for me and something I embraced and enjoyed. So yeah, kid from Western Nebraska, small town, country boy, and found my home in Nara, Japan. Still country.
It is country.
I'm just not a boy anymore.
Here maybe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So the main reason we have you on this channel today is to talk about Shakuhachi and some of your experiences learning Shakuhachi. And so I guess the best place to start is always with the genesis. And so how did you get into it?
Roommates in university. I had a roommate from Nepal who was a Buddhist, had a little Buddhist statue, and I got into Buddhism first through him and started studying some Zen stuff. And then a Japanese roommate came along, and he asked me what I'd like for my birthday, and I said some J-pop. At the time, I think Dreams Come True. I'd heard about him. I'd never heard J-pop. We couldn't, 1993, 94, you couldn't really go online and download anything because it'd take like 4 hours to get a small clip. So I had no idea what Japanese music sounded like. And all he could find was Shakuhachi CD. And right away, after I heard it, it kind of affected me. Not that it was the sound, it was that I kept hearing the flute. In our dorms, we had something called Power Hour. And that was where once a week on Friday, you could play your system as loud as you wanted for an hour. So I thought it'd be smart and play this home kyoku really loud while everyone else was, playing Nirvana and Alice in Chains, all that 90s stuff. And I was blasting home kyoku, thinking I was, being kind of like an early hipster kind of thing. And the thing was, it infected my ear. We were walking to class, I'd start hearing, da-da, there's a flute around here somewhere. And it drove me crazy to the point that I decided I needed to learn the flute to make it go away. It was literally a calling. And we had one of those import stores, like not a Pure One, it was kind of a off-brand one where they had imports from Asia and the South Pacific. And I was able to find some kind of bamboo flutes that I could modify with a hacksaw. And that was in probably 1995. And then during spring break, to the following spring, I was in a ghost town in Arizona, Jerome, Arizona, and there was an old barrel full of 5-hole flutes. They were cut just like a shakuhachi. It had a 1/8 length. It's real thin bamboo. But I think I paid $50 for that. And that was around the time that I really wanted to pursue it, and started thinking about moving to Japan around 1997, 98. Came over in 2000.
So it's year 2000, you find yourself in Japan. Where are you at?
I'm living in an apartment that's 6 mat. And
so smaller than this room.
Yes, and that included a capsule bath, a little kitchenette. they called it a pipe bed, and everything. It was fully furnished, and it was basically like someone had lived there and just left everything, and it was uncleaned. I mean, it was a true flop house kind of situation. And my students used to ask me, do you have any pets? And I say, yeah, I got about 50, 60 of them. I'd turn the light on, see them scatter. I mean, it was rough living. It was really rough living. And with that, I quickly lost sight of the shakuhachi that first year in Japan. It was so overwhelming getting into the work life, the work ethic, and the vast differences that I was used to. I definitely, the culture shock hit me pretty hard back then.
Yeah, it seems that there's a lot of people who come to Japan, and friends of mine that have come here, and they don't even make it through the year before they have to. They end their contracts early, or they dip out of them and they leave. Very few people last, more than 2 years, and if they make it past 3 years, it's quite rare. And then people who stay for a long time, of course, also are unique. What were some of the biggest? So you had these major gaps before you were actually able to get to study the shakuhachi and start to focus on that. What were some of those things outside of, like, of course, it sounds more like public housing living and
company housing. Yeah.
Oh, company housing. Same thing.
Yes.
And then also, you were mentioning the work ethic as well.
Well, it actually, the job actually led me to the shakuhachi again. And but the first thing that happened, where you're saying that first year, the company I worked for, I ended up becoming a trainer and an area kind of like assistant manager kind of thing, where I was training new teachers coming to Japan, and the turnover rate was quite high. And the first year is really rough on a lot of people, especially like in 2000. There wasn't the internet, so any kind of English entertainment was hard to come by. Books, it's just depending on other Westerners to kind of network, I have Fight Club on DVD and Titanic, passing these things around. But I had been here for 6 months, and I was out with some friends, and I shattered my elbow and ended up in a hospital for about 2 months. And that was, 6 months in, but that was my first real introduction into Japan, where I wasn't around Western people, because if you go into the Eikaiwa system, the conversation school thing, you can live in a foreign bubble. But I was thrust into Japan, the deep end right away, and I loved it. And there, it was a Buddhist hospital, and I rediscovered Buddhism. And when I came out, the old me had died. And I truly embraced the life in Japan. And I understood about throwing myself into my job and working hard. And I was opening up some new schools around Osaka, and one was at like a community college. And when I went in, there was shakuhachi lessons. It was like $4 a month for 5,000 yen. It was really cheap. And I was like, I got to be here anyway. I met the guy, and he was kind of skittish because I was his first student, and his professional name was Tozan, and being a first student with that kind of teacher kind of led me down some interesting paths early on with the shakuhachi. But it was through that job that I found the shakuhachi again and remembered why I came to Japan, because it's easy to get lost,
Yeah, and that itself is an entire, we could do video upon video about being lost in Japan. It's one of the reasons why I was so adamant about living out in the Inaka. I didn't want to be put into an area where, I would just make a bunch of foreign friends and we'd all hang out and speak English. Now all of my friends are Japanese, outside of you, and all my friends, we meet, speak Japanese, and it's being more into the culture. A lot of my friends are 3 times my age, but that's fine.
I found the same with me.
Being out in the Inaka. But I want to fast forward past that, and you go through the Tozan stuff you're working through, but you really find an interesting path when you go to Myoanji and start the life as a Komuso, and finally getting very tough time,
Yeah.
as you've told me before. As you told me before.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's when those bad things happen to us in our life, I think we're a willing participant in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I won't say this was the case, but if you're being conned, a lot of times you're a willing participant. You go to the carnival, you know those games are rigged, but then the guy's like, just give me an extra $5, I'll let you win. And then you still don't win. You know, you're kind of at fault for some of that stuff. And so my problem was I was really wrapped up in the romantic vision of Komuso and wanting to pursue that, and they just don't exist anymore in Japan in that classical sense. It's very much a Shakuhachi school. Mm. But I still was viewing it in the sense, well, there's still Zen priests, and they're still, you know, practicing the traditional ways. Why don't they just go out and do that thing that we imagine that the Komuso were doing? And so I actually did it, and I probably stepped on some toes. Mm. Not probably, I know I did. Mm-hmm. And but I just didn't see anyone doing it. But I was also totally wrong about it. That they're not Komuso like that anymore. They just aren't. And it was a hard couple years after I left the temple and refinding my path, because all I've wanted was to find a way to be authentic to my practice and myself. Mm-hmm. And to be that far off the mark was incredibly embarrassing. Mm-hmm. And so even with the flute, I distanced myself from the Shakuhachi for a couple years, and coming back into it finally where I'm embracing it again, and mm-hmm. I found the correct way, the authentic way that I can be myself and improve. But yeah.
What would you say that are like, you could highlight maybe 2 or 3 of the main points of your time as a Komuso versus the time that you're doing now? It's actually the same. I mean, I don't see any real differences. The highlights are when I'm in public, and right now I'm doing Takahatsu and public Shugyo, just training in public. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing that as Komuso, I was still engaging with the public. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing for me, is to have that face of Buddhism on the streets. Mm-hmm. A lot of tourists come to Nara. I know my first time in Nara, I wanted to see some priests. You might see them around on their scooters jetting around, but very few of them will be caught in their robes in public to where they can be stopped and people talk to them. Mm. And as a Komuso, that happened quite a bit, and now as my current practice happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's just a lot of people asking for help, spiritual mm-hmm. help. So I found those two very similar. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that... Yeah, but it's also another thing too is that these are not just clothes for you. You actually have an actual ordination. Yeah. I think one major difference was, as a Komuso, everybody wanted my toys. Mm. You know, I want the hat. I want the kesa. I want this. I want this. I want this. Where'd you get this? Where'd you get this? And the amount of interest I had in it wasn't about, you know, the Vow Suizen or the sutras or the Honkyoku. They're just coming to me for the things. Mm-hmm. Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? Because the temple is very protective of the kesa. And the tengais you can pick up anywhere, but the kesa is still very, very protected mm-hmm. Through that temple. And so once I've been doing, so the other Komuso were very protective of it, and very few would go out and do Shugyo because it's hard, embarrassing at times, mm-hmm. and it is kind of weird. Mm-hmm. But they were very, someone would be very offended, or, you know, like I was making them look bad because they weren't doing it or something. I felt a real tension mm-hmm. with the other guys. But with my current temple, the other priests are just knock yourself out, have fun, better you than me. They don't care. You know, if I'm out doing Nambutsu, yeah, do it, but better you than me kind of thing. That's a major difference, because these guys are pro.
You know, there's a few Komuso who are priests and have their temples, but the majority of them are students, Shakuhachi students.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a major difference.
Yeah, because even when I went there, it was just they were actually having a Shakuhachi class. It was just a bunch of people, you know, they're with their flutes, all dressed in Western clothes, taking a Shakuhachi lesson. And you know, it's not like you go to that area in Kyoto. It's not like you see Komuso outside ever. You know, we might see like a Komuso Taikai. Everybody gets dressed up and they all go together. It's some planned event once a year. But I have never, and I walk a lot outside, not as much as you do, but I do walk out a lot, and I go to a lot of the major Shugyo places, just like we were today. And I've never seen anybody besides you and me.
Yeah, the first time I saw a Komuso was in the mirror. And it was pretty weird. And then I did go out with my teacher later that day, and I remember seeing how weird it really was, and I really felt like I took it too far. First time I went out as a Komuso doing Takahatsu, we were in the shopping street, old-fashioned, they call it Shotengai, and I almost threw up down my flute. I was so nervous. I mean, that's the difference now after 12 years of doing it quite a bit. I don't have that, because I just felt people were uncomfortable, and that, you know, it's a big thing in Japan to create wa and harmony. And that Komuso get up creates anything but that most of the time, because it is so rare as well. But in Nara, I will see Yamabushi.
Yes. Oh yeah, Yamabushi. I've
You'll
seen.
see those guys out there. But yeah, Komuso just aren't around.
And you know what I find, it's just a side note, it's really interesting, I think maybe you can confirm or deny this, is that you watch the Yamabushi get like more and more wrecked and just like awful looking, and then they like do this complete change where they just look like they look like a supermodel almost. It's just like a very weird glow about them once they finally hit that point.
Yep. And I think where I'm approaching with my practice is more along the boro roots of the Komuso. You know, as they progress to the Komuso, but I kind of like the boro guys, where you're deep into that practice, everything just degrades around you, and it's almost like a distilling process where you get really nasty. I mean, I smell rough. These clothes stink, but you get to a point where you go full circle, and it's almost a cleansing process. And I can tell those mountain guys, when they go through some of their training, they'll come out glowing.
So we met one of those guys at Miwa. If you remember when we hiked Miwa, and so we had gone up and down this mountain, and as we're going down, there's this guy who's just in all white, like barefoot, and we stopped him and he just ran past. It was so quick, and then I went there another week afterwards and started talking to him, and found out that he was actually like an ex-cancer patient. And then he had gone into full remission, and so part of his thing is that every day he hikes up Miwa Mountain and back down as a part of his just to stay healthy thing. Every single day, he, middle of the summer, middle of winter, and he always does it barefoot.
That's awesome.
That's crazy, right? Yeah.
That's perfect practice right there. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, very good practice. So, as a part of this, I also you have a wealth of experience, knowledge of training outside, and interesting people cracking open beer cans and throwing beer on you. And, what would be your sort of things for like if you had some advice for people who are very interested in Komuso, very interested in the practice, very interested into the spiritual side of Shakuhachi? What would be like here are the first things you should absolutely know about this before you get into it?
That you're going to have to be authentic to yourself, and it's a process. Excuse me. It's really rediscovering yourself, and any kind of meditative pursuit or spiritual pursuit. It is learning about who you are and then your relationship to the outside. And the outside can be God or just everyday life, but it starts within. Mm-hmm. And just know that it's a process, and it takes years and dedication, and it's really important not to scatter your direction. Stay focused on one thing. I want to play music, but I also want to do this, and I want to do this. If you really want to walk a spiritual path, it's important to have what they call like tokobashira.
Yeah.
You gotta have that center pole in your practice, and then it basically is who you are. But the pursuit of this, you need to be very, very focused and direct, and that will hold up all your other practices. But you got to have that one thing. So if you're following the path of the bamboo and want to follow like the essence of Komuso teaching, it's really important that you stay focused on that. And it will get boring. It won't be fun most of the time. But you got to have that center structure to fall back on, especially after 10 years, 20 years. It's really important that you have that solid pillar of practice. But if you're scattering your energy every day into different things, especially when you get introduced to Japanese culture, there's so much that's cool and fun that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
cool. Okay.
And those you can supplement, but if you truly want to pursue those, then you got to abandon everything else. Mm-hmm. So you can dabble. Dabbling's okay, but it's really important.
That was one of the reasons why I had to abandon Shodo, because calligraphy is a full thing. Like you have to do that every single day for hours, and it has to be the focus. I just don't have the time for it. There's no way I could continue to develop shakuhachi with. Yeah. But like other musical things, like I studied shomyo for half a year, and still do half years of intense lessons. And then continue on individual study, and it just those kind of things supplement, like you said, right? And I think like even playing along with like senko and oko as well, like just engaging other sort of senses when playing are really good. But I could find someone who comes to Japan and they're like, I really want to do the Komuso thing, and then they find no, and they're like, oh, I want to do no theater, I want to learn a little bit about that, or I want to learn koto and whatever. And I definitely think that, and maybe you can confirm this as well, it's definitely worthwhile to go out and play, experience a bunch of things, but as you were saying, always come back to that one thing and how like, those experiences can influence and help that thing grow.
With the traditional Japanese arts, they're all interwoven. They all have kind of the same themes you'll see come up. And so I have a hard time saying no. Mm-hmm. And so my neighbor, I'm very close to my neighborhood and my neighbors, and I'm involved in the shrine stuff. And they all have their hobbies and they want to bring me into them. So I did the singing for about 5 years with them. But it did go back to supplementing the shakuhachi and sutra chanting. It really helped me with sutra chanting. But then also like karate, which, I'd done taekwondo when I was young, but I didn't want to do it. But I just couldn't say no. But the thing is with karate and onaha itoryu, those things helped me when I was doing takahatsu. Because a lot of times you'll get people a little froggy because you're on the street, you're inviting all kinds, and to have that kind of presence about you that martial arts can teach you, it helped. It really helped. And I wouldn't think that would support my shakuhachi, but it actually did.
And I think another thing too is that Japan always has this image of being like a really safe country, but they do takahatsu at 5 a.m, and it's a whole entire different crowd of people that you engage with. Yeah,
I saw a priest. It was a female Soto Zen priest. I saw her bull being robbed in Osaka, and my Scottish friend jumped in and got it back for her. But you can't you can't just think you're in Disneyland, like the whole country's just, here for my vacation. It's a real world, there's death here, in life. I mean, it's a real world, just like any other place, and you have to be careful. And
especially out in the mountains, because it's not just the people you have to worry about, but also the animals as well.
Animals.
And snakes especially.
When I came to Japan, I was 27, and I'd never really been around death. And I've experienced so much death in this country that it's been profound. It's really changed me, and especially then with being a priest, dealing, that's primarily a business with most Jodo priests. It entails a lot of afterlife care, and opening tombs and handling a lot of bones and stuff over the years. It's been really different compared to coming from America, where we always have a separation.
Yeah, and the whole entire thing with even Buddhist ceremonies for death are very different than Americans. We don't have to go into it now, but if you're interested after the video, definitely look up the Buddhist traditions of cremation. It's very personal.
Yes,
and so it's really tough for foreigners and to experience. So there's many things that it's like every corner you turn that could really push you away. I know people who have lived here for a long time who never really got their Japanese to a very high level, which has been a crutch for them. And that's really stressful for some people, because the language of Japanese is really what is the biggest barrier of coming to the country.
Yes. Yep. My Japanese level is enough that I can get in trouble with it. I agree to things I probably shouldn't. And when I was teaching, I could communicate fine with my students, and just they're the ones who actually put my Japanese over the top to where I could feel comfortable talking with people. And my best teachers were students, being at school, But it just pretty much came down to adjectives. Just shindoi, nanoi, onaka suita, these kind of things. But, it's really handy. It's really handy. But, the language is tough. And I found that a lot of back when I was managing, a lot of the females had a real tough time over here adjusting, the Western ladies. And any that stayed over 5 years, it was very rare. And so there's still cultural barriers. And you got to get through the language. I'm having problems now with the temples is that I need to do calligraphy. And I can't. I just have no aptitude for it. And so there's always barriers. Always the one thing you're missing, it seems like, at least for me.
No, there's always a thing where you feel like, and now I have to do this, or now I have to learn this, or now I have to do this next step that is a hindrance or a barrier to the things I really want to do. And you and I have both talked about this a lot too. Just Japan moves so slow with everything. One thing is kind of talking a little bit about being a foreigner in Japan is like when you have to do something at the Shurakusho. And you go there with your paper and you think, I've got it signed, I've got it ready to go, I'm just going to submit it. Oh, but you don't have form B, C, D, and E.
So desu ne.
Yes, and you get the teeth sucking. And that's when you know you don't have something.
Yeah.
And, it's not uncommon to have to schedule a time to go to the Shurakusho, you present your papers, they say, oh, you need this. Come back tomorrow. You come back tomorrow with those papers, and they say, "Oh, well, you also need this." And it's sometimes it's very difficult, and because there's an order of things and how they do it, and they don't break from that.
Yeah.
So you're not just learning culture, but you're learning the design of the entire system that they're not going to tell you because it's so obvious to them. And it's just how things are. They don't even think it's necessary to teach you it until the moment comes where like, oh yeah, you guys don't have this. So we should have told you this.
I found in most situations I just play dumb. and they'll help me. They'll take pity on me.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can do is get angry and get put off by it. You just got to settle into it, and that's the way it is. It takes more time, and it's hard to deal with as a Western person. You're used to, the customer is always right kind of thing, and how dare you? No.
Yeah, not in Japan.
I just play dumb, and they'll take pity on me, and they'll help you. They will help you to a fault, but you just have to really realize you're working on a different time system as well.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of kankyo, humility, in Japan, and it's one of the things like you're saying, like that idea of the customer is always right. It's not the case in Japan. You're lucky that the business is helping you.
That's right. Right.
It's so different, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon for a master shokunin to almost feel like when you're there as a customer, like that you're a burden to them, and then you say, "I'm so sorry for bothering you in this time. Please take my money." So it's very strange, but that's how it works in Japan. It always has been, But to bring it back to Shakuhachi and to a close, what are some of the things that you're currently doing with Shakuhachi, and what are your what are some of like the current goals that you're working on?
Actually, one of my goals of late is to not have goals. I've always been a goal-driven person. It was pressed upon me in school. You gotta set long-term goals, short-term goals.
Where are you going to be in 1 year?
Yeah.
10 years, yeah.
And I've found it's better. I'm throwing all that away and just living more in the present. No goals. Just stay with it. The kind of target is to really penetrate the essence of the Shakuhachi. And, what is the like we were talking about the Ichiwanjo Butsu. And finding that one sound through the many in my mind. And so I'm just trying to find the right resonance of the Shakuhachi with the outside world and within myself. So it's far removed from music and it's sounding good. I remember the first time we were really kind of playing together and meeting our styles. You're playing flat. Why are you always playing flat? Kind of a flat kind of guy. And I'm becoming even more flat as I go on. But yeah, I'm giving up goals and just trusting the process of life and trying to let go even more. And hanging on to that fluke for the moment. When I, like I said after the Komuso thing, I was ready to let it go forever, but I'm gonna hang on to it and float down the stream a little more with it. So yeah.
So of course we did 3 different videos. We talked about Suizen. We talked about Choshi.
Yes.
And we also talked about Shugyo.
Yes.
And so all of those are on the membership. So for the members, you can the ones who are pay the money, get the good stuff. Whatever it is, it's something.
Yeah, there's something in there.
And if there's not something, you'll find something.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Hopefully,
pretty pictures. But no, it was an absolute pleasure today.
Thank you.
To spend the morning together, play outside, and do some Shugyo, some Suizen, some Choshi.
Yeah.
And thanks for stopping by the house as usual.
Yeah,
And if people want to learn more about you, where can they go? And
I'm just only on Facebook. If you just search Jonen, I'm about the only one on there. And there will be some stuff on Instagram, but I don't post that much on there. So that'd be the easiest place to find me.
And they can just add you, and then they can see all the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty active on there, just following the past year or so of my training. Being a full-time begging priest has been quite the journey of the past year, and it's continuing.
Yeah, so for everybody, that means no job.
No job.
Not working.
Not teaching English.
Yeah.
My only income comes through my bowl right now. So,
so the goal of the Takahatsu, so going outside and playing and whatever gets put in there, that's what you get.
Yeah.
So that's what you live your day on.
I have supporters. I have people that are behind me. When you know, you see a soldier in combat, you know, there's a long supply train behind them and support. And I'm a different kind of soldier right now. I don't know what I am. But I do definitely have a huge support system behind me. So I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, my income is through my bowl.
And so you've been doing this now for about a year and a half now? Year and a couple months?
Yeah, a little over a year and a couple months.
Okay. And how many miles have you walked now? Or how many kilometers?
3 miles. I've walked 3,000, close to 3,600.
That's amazing. Very good.
Yeah, I've gone through a lot of sandals, and I'm starting to feel it now. You know, I turned 50 last January, and so I'm feeling it. You know, it's going to happen, but it's been one of the biggest blessings of my life to be able to have that time, especially in the location I'm in. I'm thankful every day walking home through rice fields and seeing the beautiful mountains of Nara, and engaging with the locals here. And now that the country's opened again, the whole world is again descending upon Nara, and I'm able to meet people from all over. So it's a very exciting time. Wonderful. Yeah.
All right, well, check us on, go over to the membership, sign up there, and watch the other 3 videos that we did together. And hopefully there will be something over there for you as well.
Thank you.